see if it goes. You are live. There we go.
Perfect.
What's going on, gang? You were first, Daniel. I'll give you that. Quick to the comments. What's going on, Chenda? Rick, how you doing? Spark, thanks for coming out, man. Turn up the mic volume. Yeah. I'm an absolute streaming noob, so I'm going to make the best of this.
Do you want to take a drink?
I've got water here.
Okay. Water for me either way.
Yeah, plans on the next song. I have a new song coming out at the end of this month on the 26th of October, I believe. It's called Puzzle, and I'm actually really stoked on it. I think it's one of the coolest ones I've made. One second, I'm just gonna close this door.
This computer.
Victor, what's going on, buddy? Good to see you, man. Yeah, so Noel, I'm gonna try and upload this after the stream's finished, so that people who couldn't make it can join in and enjoy. Daniel, man, thank you, brother. What key is it? Off the top of my head, I honestly couldn't tell you. Thank you, Davinder. I hope I pronounced that right. Davinder? What's going on, TR Kerr? I see you. From the DMs to the YouTube live stream. The boy follows me everywhere, through thick and thin. Look at that, Thomas. It's working. We're just going to let it chill out for a second here and let some more people join in. So then we can spread the knowledge to everyone. Because knowledge is power. I'm stoked to show it. I just hope that people actually learn something. Um, as far as production goes, I don't consider myself to be, I don't know how you call it, like a master of anything. I think I've just kind of gotten good at the simplicity approach that works. So if anything, I'm hoping that I can kind of show that to you guys, that you can make good songs with a very simple approach. You don't need to do anything crazy or flashy. You can get the same effect with very little. Well, a decent amount. How did I get Nev on the track? I believe their management reached out to my manager, and I mean, Wildfire came about, sorry, almost a year ago. I just woke up to an email saying, "Hey, do you like this idea?" It was like really rough. One verse was written with the pre-chorus, and that was it. And so I just woke up in the morning and I actually started jamming to it on my guitar. Came up with the initial chords for the verses, and then produced it out to the first drop, sent it back to them. They were like, "Hey, this is really cool." And then kept working on it. So I produced out like a second instrumental verse, and then they wrote to that, and we wrapped up the song. It was super quick. They're like, working with Nevve is awesome. They're so talented. She's such a good writer, and they're quick. I think that's the biggest thing, is just like hardworking vocalists like that are just awesome in this industry. So I guess just as like a general question for the people that are here already, what kind of stuff are you guys wanting to get out of this? Like, what are things that you're stuck on, or things that you'd want to learn from the stream? I think everyone already knows the answer to that. It was actually, I'm guilty of producing and thinking I'll recognize something while I'm working on it, and it's not until the project is finished that I'll realize like I've almost accidentally recreated a song. So with this one, I mean, like, as far as Millennium's music goes, it's pretty standard. Like, it's just a big saw stack that just sits underneath, some fat drums, and that's basically what I recreated. So it does have that very like sound of Walking Away, or like Fractures, kind of, just like a wall of sound type of thing. So, I mean, I'm definitely gonna walk you guys through that. Definitely. So I will admit right now, mixing and mastering is not my forte. I think that's something I could help you with. In terms of that, is it's very easy to overcomplicate the process of mixing and mastering. I know that it's important. I'm not in any way denying that. But for me, I think it's more important to spend time focusing on the musicality of things. And if everything in the project is there for a reason and is serving its purpose, it makes the mixing and mastering process that much easier. Because if you're forcing things to blend through endless EQing and compression and excitement, and you can run a million plugins and it's not going to make it sound better if the sounds aren't where they're supposed to be, if that makes sense. I will show you my guitar processing, and once again, you are going to see how simple it can be. Inspiration comes from the heart, Noel, sorry. But definitely I can talk a little bit about that, pushing through those tough times when you're not feeling inspired. The first song I produced, holy. I mean, I've been making music for about 4.5 years now, a little over 4 years. Um, I started way back making really shitty progressive house. I wanted to be, I was DJing at a club in my university city, and I wanted to make my own music. And so I tried to make progressive house, and it didn't sound very good. So it takes time. We all start off somewhere. What monitors? I have these Yorkville YSM 8s that are trash. They're super boomy. They're fun to listen to music on. They're not the best for producing. Um, so I wouldn't recommend them. I am upgrading to a new set of monitors in the next few weeks here. Actually, probably I'm going to Europe in a few weeks, and then when I get back, I'm going to get a new set of the Dyn Audio. What are they called? It's their new three-way monitor. I went and checked them out at a set of them at Long McQuaid, and they sounded amazing. Very nice stereo image. Yeah, so Phil, I have a guy that I send. Actually, I have a few guys. My friend Loki, who was in the stream a second ago. He helps me with my mix and mastering. And then for my originals, I also have a guy from London that I go back with. So I'll send him my songs, just for that extra little boost in quality. Yeah, 4 years of grinding, man. You guys able to hear the audio coming out of the project file there? Just want to make sure it's all working. I've never actually done a live stream before, so. Awesome. When I learned how to play guitar. I actually started playing guitar back when I was like 14 for the classic. I wanted to look cool in my high school and be able to play guitar in front of girls. And then I used to play guitar all the time. I was in a screamo band back in high school, and I played the lead guitar, and I would just scream into a microphone and shred. I've evolved since then. Orchestral effects. Honestly, if you go and just browse through Splice, there's tons of stuff on there. Or if you are sometimes lazy like me, honestly, man, the Cashmere packs are, everyone uses them for a reason. They're good. They're organized well. They're all good quality. Don't be ashamed to use Cashmere. Everyone's doing it. How did I first get noticed by Trap Nation? I mean, my manager was good friends with the guys. They were living in the same apartment building. And so I actually met them before Fairlane was ever even a thing. And yeah, we just became friends. We got along really well. I helped them build the studio. I did a few mixes for them for the YouTube channel. And then when I started putting out music, it was kind of just that perfect segue of like, hey, we get along with you as a person, and now you're making stuff that we vibe with. So the relationship just kind of took off from there. Thanks, Victor. Yes, that is my friend's dog. We're dog sitting for the week, and he's my little companion. My studio companion keeps me a little bit less lonely in here. I am 28 years old. Oof. 28 years young. My manager is a guy named Jay, and I met him at Coachella 3 years ago. We were staying in the same house. Yeah, best way to get management. I mean, there are agencies and management groups that you can email, that you can submit demos to. I find that if it's the most organic way is to just have them approach you. If you're putting out the music and people are hearing it, you will have teams approach you. And I think that the benefit of that is that rather than you seeking them out, you know, you want a manager that believes in the project more than you do, in a sense, because they're the people that are going to be pushing you and getting you through those tough times, you know, when you're maybe lacking inspiration or you're not sure where you want to take the project. And it kind of just snowballs from there. So definitely just be very careful when you're picking your management, and make sure that there's somebody that's approaching you for the right reasons. Okay, Zach. I will do my best to make sure that it's up for you when you're less tired so you can take in all this amazing information. How you make beat? I'm just going to say how you make beat. We're going to go through that in a second. Yes, I am friends with Andre. Very nice boy. Good kid. Okay. I've made you guys wait long enough. Let's get into the project and talk a little bit about how I made Wildfire. So let's start off with the intro here. So right off the bat, those guitars, that's actually kind of where I started the project, was with that kind of gloomy chord progression and this guitar loop. So I just run all my guitars directly through my interface here, which is a Native Instruments Complete Audio 6. Nothing fancy, but I find that, I mean, it's clean, it runs well with Mac, and they're pretty loud. As far as the preamp goes, it's built into it. I mean, they're not doing anything crazy. Most of everything you can achieve in post-processing if you're, you know, a lazy producer like me. But here, I'll show you guys. So I started with this loop with my guitar, and I chopped it up just to get the, you know, the syncopation right, make sure that the notes are hitting on the right times. And this is that. And in terms of processing, voila. It's as I said, it's very simple. You don't need to do a lot. I use a lot of Saturn and a lot of Guitar Rig to distort my guitars. So this preset here, back in the day, is, you know, just kind of like a clean. It just dirties it up a little bit. I EQ'd out the low end just to kind of clean it up, and then just added a ping pong delay. And as you can see, with just those three simple plugins, you get, you know, this kind of cool tonal guitar. I pitched it off to the right just a little bit, just to kind of, you know, add a bit more of that stereo sound to the project itself. And then I layered it with this. So this is actually guitar I recorded for another project, you know, way back, and it ended up being this kind of rhythmic guitar that I include in almost all of my songs now. And it just has this kind of like, so it's being warped, which is why it kind of has that yucky sound. So I use it a little bit more as just like a background element. I wouldn't necessarily push it to the front of the project, just because the quality isn't, as good as it could be. So definitely a tip there. If you're using warped audio and you can hear that it's being warped. So like I said, this original project, I think I recorded it at was like maybe like 100 and something BPM. So to slow it down to 95, you're going to get that kind of stretched out sound. I wouldn't recommend pushing that to the front of your mix just because it's going to sound obvious that it's been warped. Next I added in, so this is kind of cool. It's like as cheesy as it sounds. I literally just found a fire. And it's like, oh, the song's called Wildfire, so let's put a fire sample in there. And I did that just to kind of add that how artistic of you sort of element to it. The chords. So this is kind of the body of the verses are these chords. They're just super warm and just sit there. And once again, this is very simple. I'm just EQing out some of the kind of the low mids there so you don't get as much of that rumble when it comes through. On Serum, here it is. It's literally just one voicing, and then I just added a low pass filter just to cup it off there so that it sounds, warm instead of that init preset kind of saw squeal. But a big thing that I cannot stress enough is that the sound design is second. It's always second to me. The biggest thing is the voicing of the chords. So taking time to play out nice voicings is going to get a way better sound than browsing presets and trying to, find that perfect, serum saw that everyone's chasing after. The key to getting things to sound thick and fat is harmonic unity. So getting, your chords to sit in the right way, having the support melodies playing the right things. And that's going to really, bring the song together. So like this last chord, I love with the tension there. So that's what kind of gives it that like eerie, tense sound that you're hearing in the chords there. Keaton, baby, I see you. Thanks for stopping in, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, and then this was from the original acapella. It's just this little chop I literally took. And that again, it's just adding rhythm. So it's just trying to like find things that are gonna kind of get your head bobbing. Yo, what's going on, buddy? Thanks for popping in, man. And so yeah, you get that all together and you just get, you can just see how it kind of just has like a groove to it already. So we'll play it through here.
Now the sun is low, totally no valleys. Don't know where to go.
So the biggest thing in here is obviously the drums coming in. Yes, Son Ho is a very good writer as well. So soloing the drums for you. So I got this kind of ping pong going between the snap and this rim shot, and then this little reverse. You'll also notice too that I send most of my reverb to a channel. That was something I did a lot more in the past. I don't do it as much anymore just because I found that the reason I was doing it originally was I used to be very greedy with my reverb. So a problem I had a lot of times was I would just send everything to reverb, or I'd put reverb on every single channel. And then by the end of it, my project was a mess because there was just these tails of reverb that would go off into, infinity, and I'd have to try and go back and deal with them. Especially as the project gets bigger, you're looking at, 100 tracks plus even in some cases. So going through and trying to clean that up can be a bit of a mess. So definitely that was a recommendation I had, was just creating a single reverb room. I use Valhalla reverb for most of my reverbs. Just cutting the low end to make sure that you're not getting that extra muddiness from your reverb. And then you can control the decay time there and the size of the room. So I left it at 100 because I wanted kind of that big sort of, the big reverb sound. And then you can just control the wetness from the send channel there directly. But the nice thing about that is that you can go in and you can just mute your reverb at any time. And so that allows you to kind of, if you want to hear what it sounds like dry, you can just, turn off your reverb room and you're not going to have any reverb to deal with. Another thing I do, so here's another plugin I wanted to show you guys too. So this is called Bassism, and I use it for a lot of my low thumpy kicks, as well as building kicks, just because it's a super simple kick synth. You've got a lot of control. You've got to control over all of your parameters essentially. But I just like it because rather than going through and trying to find samples that you can pitch down or that you'd have to kind of process, you can just make them from scratch. So this one I recommend. Super cheap. I think it was like $40, and it's one of the coolest plugins I have that I use all the time. So how do I manage to keep a low CPU? I mean, I'm lucky enough that my computer it's got a pretty fast processor. Like the CPU speed it's got a nice clock rate. So and I've got enough RAM in here as well that I'm not usually throttling the CPU too bad. If I get into the later stages of a project, I will run into CPU issues just like everyone else. But I think the biggest thing is just to make sure that, if you are hitting that CPU issue, just to start freezing and flattening and printing to audio. Because especially plugins like Serum that run, you're running two 16 voice oscillators. So you've got right out of the bat 32 voicings coming out of a single note, and then you're running, a 5 stack chord. It's a lot of voicings coming out of a plugin. So that will definitely kind of strangle your computer a little bit. Making a track sound organic. So I think that the biggest thing to that is just trying or doing your best to add in the human element. So recording live instruments, swinging things, having things just ever so slightly off grid. I notice a lot of the time too, when I'm producing, I'll kind of like almost beatbox to myself a little bit. So I'll kind of like a da, 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 and I'll hear that and I'm like, okay, cool. So like, that's kind of where my mind is taking me. That's what I want to hear. That's kind of like the groove that's complementing the instruments that I have right now, and I'll go and I'll try and recreate that. And then I find that kind of recreating those drums that you naturally want to hear or naturally try to beatbox is what's going to give you kind of that swing or that, kind of, as you said, like the organic sound that you're probably going for. First thing I do when I start a project is I lay down the chords. So I mean, my music is, I'm not like the king of sound design or doing anything too crazy. So I find that for me, it's like, if I'm going to make melodic music, the melodies have to work. So I want to find the right chords. I want to find the right melodies, and then I'm just going to build it up from there. And it makes it a little bit easier for me. To make a song, Keaton, I've had songs come out that I've finished in a day. I've had songs that have gone through revisions for months. So it really depends. I think a lot of the time it's just whether or not you get that initial inspiration and you can just run with it. As I said, this one came out, like as soon as I heard the vocal, I had a verse and a drop produced, you know, after the first day of working on it. Just because I knew exactly where I wanted to take it, but other projects can be a little bit more troublesome. Yes, I record my guitars. So I'll either use this microphone here to record my acoustics, or I'll plug my electric directly into my interface. And I can show you more of that processing here in a second. So
Now the sun is low, told with no valleys. Don't know where to go, city is all I see, yeah. Hang at the Chateau, Boulevard Royal.
So these are cool. So this little bell pluck is a sample that I just found on my computer, and I've ended up using it in like every song that I make. So I don't know if you guys have heard like the Uncover You chill mix that I did. It's in Uncover You, it's in Wildfire, and it's just this little bell. And it just has this cool little like tail end on it that plays out, and it has like a kind of like a wet drippy sound, and I just think it adds like a nice little kind of like background noise. We got the demo vocals from them first, and then I produced around it. An album. Stay tuned. So here's another little thing too. A trick that I've recently, spent a little bit more time working on in some of my newer projects, and then something that I tell a lot of people too, is creating a nice ambience. So kind of like the atmosphere of the song, the things that kind of make it sound not so just dry and stock sounding, I guess, for lack of better terminology. Like, I'll get a lot of demos from people, and it sounds good and everything's there, but it doesn't quite have that like take you to a different world type of element. And I think that adding these little atmospheres and things that kind of fill in the background, that they're the sounds that you don't quite realize that you're hearing as a listener, but they're there. So like this little background is just like a simple, vocal sample that I actually use as the lead in this track as well. It just kind of pairs with, the bells. So you can like almost barely hear it, but it's just enough that your ears pick up on it. Aw, Sky, you made it, buddy. What's going on, Nikita? Thanks for stopping in. That really depends. I definitely prefer working around vocals. So it depends. Like, there's times you come into the studio and just start working on something, whether you start with like an ARP loop or, a guitar loop or something, and you can build an entire track around it. And then you kind of have the freedom to just go and do whatever you want with it. But I do like having some sort of writing down, even if it's just melodies and like scratch vocals, like something to kind of like just get things started. And then it gives you an idea where you want to take things right away. Cause I think that, maintaining that structure in your song is a big thing. And if you don't really know where you're going to take it, you can easily get lost in that and then spend a lot of time working on things that might not matter as much. So that's kind of I definitely prefer getting the vocal first, because I'm a spoiled baby. Okay. So here's what I was talking about. So adding in more drums, just having the track progress and just kind of adding that extra little bit of energy each time, a 16-bar loop kind of resolves. So the song is always progressing and kind of, building up in energy and giving people something to anticipate. So, we go from just the guitars to adding in some simple drums and, some background noises, some little like trinkles here and there, to bringing in the full drum stack. So with this, I found this hi-hat loop. Chopped it up, kind of got it to fit the groove that I want a little bit more. And then, as I said, they're good. The Cashmere drum samples, these are orchestral samples. You don't have to just drop it in, like chop it up, find parts of it that you like, find parts of it you don't like. You can take things out. You have the freedom as a producer to do that. Because when you pair them together, you kind of find a new groove that that'll sit with, what you have in the project already. This is something I do a lot, is I kind of like to almost like, what do you call it, like ping pong my snaps and claps, things like that. So you have like a, like it goes up and then down. So this, for instance, is this clap. It's just like a big wet splash clap. So just kind of, there's just movement in it. It's not just like, here's a clap, here's a clap, here's a clap. It's like, no, it's kind of taking the ear by surprise a little bit more. It really depends on how close you are with the producer, Nikia, and like how convenient it is for you to get into a session with them, I think. So for me, it's like a lot of the producers that I'm working with are based out of, say, Los Angeles or New York, anywhere else in the States. I don't quite have that convenience to just, sit in the room and work with them. Definitely if you're in the same city, though, I think it's better to do it together, just because I find that a lot of times with this kind of like email relationship, you lose track of this idea that you're working on a song together. And I think that having two people in the room do it together, I don't know, just brings you that much closer, and it makes it more of like a shared experience rather than just kind of like, hey, here's the song, cool, I produced it, and then we just put it out. I'm not saying that's the experience I've had, but I'm just saying that that's kind of like an exaggerated version of how it can feel at times. The sweet spot for BPM. It all depends on the track, man. If you want to make bangers, things that are going to get people trap arming at the festivals, then, that 150 to 160 range. This kind of like 95 to 100 is more the kind of like moody tempo. I find it's like more down tempo, and you can get a little bit more emotional with it. So this is what I wanted to talk about. These guitars sound like absolute trash. And like, I'm not even going to try to cover it up. I recorded them on like a little pencil mic in my old studio, which was literally just in my bedroom upstairs in this house. And like, I don't even think I tuned my guitars. I was in such a hurry. I was like so excited to just work on something that I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, I'm just going to lay this down. And like, they don't sound good. But, they're there more for a textural purpose. Like, they're just there to kind of sit on top of the mix and just kind of, once again, add like more rhythm to it. So they almost sound detuned. But in the context of everything else, you don't really hear that they sound like that. As I said, they're just kind of adding on to like even this drum melody. So as you can see, everything just kind of sits together to make a cohesive vibe. Yes, I will break down the drop synths, because that's what we all want. We want our drops to sound cool. Okay. So this is another one of those little things I use a lot in my songs, just to add more harmonies. So this is a vocal that I have from ages ago that I literally just plop in to most of my projects. It was from a session that we did like way back, and it's just like a ooh. And I can't remember if I sang that or if my friend sang that, but it doesn't sound like either of us anymore because we processed it to hide that. And I'll just stack it. So I'll literally just go in and I'll just pitch bend it, just using the Ableton transposition. And once again, it's not going to give you the best quality per se, but it's more just a layering tool. So it's things that, you know, you're not pushing to the front. You don't have to worry as much about processing it to the end of the, you know. But when you stack them together, you get this kind of nice. And then a third layer. So that comes in the pre-chorus build-up, where I kind of change up the chords a little bit, and I want it to sound a little bit sadder. So. So this is this respace. I believe, yeah, I just found it as like a pad. But I just liked it because it kind of had that opening sort of like little bit of movement, and it was just warm and easy. I didn't really need to even do too much to it. And it just kind of sat in the mix and served its purpose. So in this build up here, yeah, I wanted it to kind of like everything collapse a little bit and like go really quiet and then slowly build back up to give that dynamic difference, you know, so that when the drop comes in, it's kind of like, whoa, here it is. Like it all kind of hits you at once. So I did that by filtering out the drums, low passing them so that you just kind of have this really like anticipation, and then slowly builds up. And then when the drop hits, it's kind of this wall of sound because you get all those high end frequencies and things. So I literally just run an EQ over the drum bus and just slowly opened it up. And then that's where the drop comes in. I do get a lot of my samples off Splice, yes. As you can see here, so a lot of my impacts and my sweeps and effects do come from the Cashmere sample pack, just because they're simple, they're clean, and they work really easily. You can just kind of plop them into the mix and they do exactly what they need to do. And for the most part too, it's like, you know, you just want a white noise sweep. Like you don't need to go kind of too overboard trying to find the right samples for that. If you find something that works, put it in. Unless you really want to do something crazy and unique, then by all means, you know, you can do that. But I think that just for my approach, it's more so just, hey, I need white noise to sweep up. So I'm just going to go and find one that I know works. So it depends on it depends on which element I'm sidechaining. So a lot of the times it's a lot easier. So especially like for chords, I'll just sidechain the bus. So if I have a chord stack and I want it all to kind of pump at the same level, I will just add sidechain to that one section there. So to give you an example, as we'll get into that here, we're about to get into the drop. I have this sidechain running on the entire drop chord stack. And so that's, you know, so that they're all going to pump and kind of breathe at the same rate. Because if you have an individual sidechain on each channel, you'll start to notice that it just doesn't quite have that same like group impact, if that makes sense. So to answer your question, Lost Atlas, I don't actually use the drum rack. I have nothing against it. I've just always been very like visual, if that makes sense. I don't like working in MIDI as much. I like working in audio. And I think it just, as I said, it just kind of gives me more like more of an idea of what's happening in my project, and I can kind of follow it a little bit easier, if that makes sense. What's going on, Leon? Greetings from Canada. Thanks for stopping in, man. There we go. Looks like Andre made a post, so people are popping in now. What's going on, buddy? Thank you. I appreciate the support. Can you still make high quality songs on GarageBand? I mean, I don't work in GarageBand, but I mean, just like any other DAW, like the quality of the song is just based on the writing. Like you don't, you know, there's like that. People always ask like, oh, what's better, FL Studio, Ableton, Cubase? And it comes down to functionality and interface. Like if you are comfortable working in that software, then work in that software. If it's not working for you, then maybe go find something else. So I mean, I've always worked in Ableton. I tried Cubase for a little while. I had a friend of mine suggest it to me because you can customize basically any function. And he's now gone from that over to Reaper, and it's even more customizable than Cubase. And that's his production style. So he enjoys being able to make, you know, hotkey commands and things that can simplify and speed up the production process. Whereas I'm not as worried about that. I just like, you know, something that looks nice and something that works for me. So that's why I work in Ableton. Yeah, so I talked about that earlier. That it was kind of like the accidental inspiration where I heard the original vocal demo. I started producing it. I made a drop, and then my roommate actually came in the room and was like, yeah, this is cool. It sounds like Elenium. And at that point where I was kind of like, oh, yeah, it does sound a lot like Elenium. But, you know, I think that at the end of the day, if people enjoy the song, then don't focus too much on that. It's really easy. And I even got a bit of release anxiety, like, oh my God, am I putting this out? Does it sound too much like an Elenium record? Are people going to like it? And they did. And, you know, you're always going to get comments saying this sounds like this sounds like that. But at the end of the day, I like the song. And if you guys like the song, then that's all that really matters.
Watch the lights flicker out. We'll drive north out of the city, make our own little town. When the love is running over, wear your heart like a crown. I'm getting so tired, man, get away. We can make a wildfire getaway.
Cool. So there's the drop. That's what everyone's wanting to make. It's what I get a lot of questions about too, is how do you get your drop to sound full? How do you get it to sound cool and big and this and that? So I'm going to touch on that. Cool. So right off the bat, the drop is basically just a supersaw stack and the little vocal melodies that I put on top. So I will walk you through how to make big fat supersaws. So yeah, as I was talking about earlier, sidechain compression on, mix that. Sidechain compression on the bus, just because I want the chords to pump all at the same rate. So rather than going through and putting a sidechain compressor on all of the elements in this stack, this is the entirety of the saw stack as well. So that's 5 elements playing. Yeah, and just giving them the pump and getting them to breathe, and then you just have that much more control over it. The main element, though, I believe, is this hypersaw. So this was just, I think it's like a Serum preset in the synths. It's just called the Hypersaw Basic. When you open it, it's like hella detuned and super wide and crazy. So I just kind of scaled it back a little bit so that it wasn't so wild and out of control. And once again, it's not as much about the complexity of the sound. It's the voicings in the chords. It's the notes that they're playing. They give it the fullness that you're going after. So in that sense, you don't need to layer as much because you're getting all of that energy out of just the chord selection. To answer your question, Tim, the chords in the drop are not the same as the verse. They are the same as the pre-chorus. So that's when the chord progression changes, and then the chords in the drop. I use the same voicings here as I do in the chords here. Holy moly. You got 224 people. I didn't even notice it sneak up like that. Sheesh. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about too, the drop chords are not just a block synth that just shoots out. I have it chopped up here into, what would that be, eighth notes? So it's and what I did as well is I added this swing. So in Ableton, you can add grooves. You can add a groove pool to MIDI, and then that way it kind of adds a swing to it. So it's not just da 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 da. It kind of has like a da 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 da, and then that gives it more of that like kind of organic, groovy feel. So that is applied to the MIDI in all of the chords on here. The next layer, I believe, is this one. So this is kind of like, I'll give it away. You guys can go and start copying the Fairlane sound. No, it's nothing special. It's the same thing. So it's just like a supersaw synth, that same hypersaw basic. And then I just run it through a guitar rig and I put this formant filter on it. So this is in... Oh yeah, also, if anyone knows how to reload all of my presets in Guitar Rig, they just disappeared one day, and it's killing my soul. So if anyone can help me with that, please, thank you. I'd love you forever. In the filters, this formant filter, and it's just kind of like a talk box. It gives that like, makes it sound like a voice. Adds formant to it. So I just automate this talk, and this kind of... So I did a really simple automation there where it just kind of opens up. And again, that just kind of adds a bit of movement to the chords, makes them sound a little bit less blocky and boring. And then just adds to the sound overall. So when I solo those two together, subtle layers, very subtle layers. This is Contact. I think it's just a choir. Yeah. So it's this Rain Contact library, and it's just the classic choir sound there. And I'll pitch it up, and you just, again, it just adds kind of like a cool, like human sound to it. Colossal, this is Ableton Live. What kind of music do I like? I grew up listening to a lot of screamo music, a lot of emo, so I like a lot of that. My classic go-tos too are, I love Death Cab for Cutie and like Postal Service, that kind of old stuff. I used to listen to a lot of City and Color. Nowadays, I listen to a lot of trap music. I still listen to Progressive House because, that was just the OG days. Shout out Progressive House. Listen to a lot of dubstep as well. Mostly when I'm in the mood to party though, which is rare because I'm old. What's going on? Thanks for stopping by, Joe. Okay. Moving on. So this is the gritty bass layer. So I believe. Yes. Okay. So this is another preset. It's this Angry Bass 4 from, you guessed it, the Cashmere Pack. Yay. And I've used it in a lot of my saw stacks because it's just this like really gritty, distorted bass, and it just sits nicely. Like when you just want that kind of low mid grittiness to kind of glue all your chords together. I throw it in there. I also added this Redux. It just kind of destroys it a little bit more because I just want it to sound really gross and destroyed. And then finally, this, I think it's just white noise. Yeah, so I just open up an instance of Synth, and I just do a white noise voice on the one channel there, on the one oscillator, and I'll just layer that in. You could do it with a sample too. I don't know why I did it in Synth. I think I just wanted to copy the media. I didn't want to chop up audio for a second, so that's it. So as you can see, yeah, it's nothing crazy. But when you put them all together, they sound pretty cool. Yes. So the other part of the track that adds the kind of cool swung groove is these little fills that come in between the chords. So these again are super simple. I think it's just a patch that I made in Serum. Oh no, it's not even, it's just a drill bass. And then I just automated the filter on it. So it kind of wubs in and out. And did the same thing for these chords here. But these I think are going through, yeah, a Redux as well. So I use a lot of Redux to just like bit crush and kind of like add that grittiness to some of the elements in the mix. So if I want it to kind of not sound as boring, That's a go-to. And then it just adds that kind of like a little bit of high excitement on it as well. So without it, it's just... And then same thing. So yeah, this is just a super simple 3-voice super saw that I'm running through a low-pass filter as well. And so you can open up the... Where the heck is it? Oh, that's right. I'm having it. Okay, yeah, I had it running through the LFO. I was like, where's my automation? So yeah, I'll just run an LFO automation onto the cutoff, and then I can just play with the rate to get it to where I want it to be. What's going on, Remix Nation? And NIN Games, thanks for popping in, man. Give me 1 sec. I got a barking dog upstairs I gotta go deal with. Barking at the mailman. What a cliche. What's going on, Dominic? Brazil. I love Brazil. Cool. So yeah, so I added these in just because without them, I don't know, the drop just didn't push you forward. Like it lost that kind of like oomph. So this is without them. So I kind of heard this empty space, like, do I want like a sweep? Do I want something cool in there? And so I just started playing around with these weird little wubs, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I use that similar sound a lot in, I use it in Uncover You. I use it, I think, in my Chainsmokers remix, that Wake Up Alone one. In the next song that's coming up, same sort of thing. It's just like these little simple fills. I mean, some people think they sound dinky and cheesy. I don't really care. I think that they work. And yeah, so once again, it's just like adding things to kind of, you know, distract the ear. Because if it sounds empty, like your ear picks up on it, and you're kind of like, okay, you know, what do I put in here? So you could achieve the same thing with like percussion or anything as well. But I chose to go this route. And the second one too, I like adding breaths. So this one, I think I ran through a vocoder, and then flattened it. Or is there just because there's... Yes, there's a redux on the channel as well. So I put a redux on the group just to, you know, distort it or bit crush it even more. Because I really wanted them to sound kind of glitchy and weird. But yeah, I was hearing it, and it was kind of like a da-na-na, whoop, da-na-na, ha. So I just kind of recreated that. So as I said earlier, I definitely I beatbox a lot while I'm working on music. So I just kind of will hear ideas, and I'll like be vocalizing them live as I'm working on things, and then I'll just do what I can to recreate them in Ableton at a later time. The other thing too is I thought that my drop was sounding a bit empty, so I brought these guitars from the intro back in. So those just kind of sit underneath everything, but they're there just enough that you can still hear them coming through. The drums. So Another thing you'll notice is in all my channels, I have it titled like Z underscore. I do that for the purpose of stemming out at the end of the project. So, as a producer, you know, if you ever get to a time when you're going to be sending out stems for whether it be for remix packages, whether it be for mixing and mastering, whatever it is, it's important to have your stems organized. And it was actually a good friend of mine taught me the easiest way to do this is when you go, you know, to render out your project, you select all individual tracks, or you select the, you know, selected tracks only. You get this spew of like everything that exists in the project, and as you know, projects get full, like this one, you know, is 100 tracks. It's a lot to deal with. So what I'll do afterwards is I'll go through the rendered stems, I'll sort them by alphabetical order, and so everything with the Z in front of it will, you know, pop up at the bottom of the list, and then it's easier for me to see, okay, these are my bust stems that I want to deal with. So then that way you're not sending, you know, 200 stems to somebody if they're going to mix and master your track. So yeah, so these are the drums in the drop. This is a kick that I made in Bassism, actually, is that plugin that I showed you guys earlier that I use in these little verse kicks. It's this plugin here, and it's super simple to use. You don't have to make your drums. I think that a friend of mine who taught me a lot, taught me a lot about what I know when it comes to production. He put me through the process of making my drums, so like making my kicks in plugins like Bassism, and same goes for snares. Not because you need to know how to do that, but because it kind of like taught me more about what I'm looking for when it comes to sample selection. If you know how to make the sound, then it's a lot easier to go through and know what you're listening for. I hope that makes sense because listening back, it might not, but. Is it hard to make a song? It depends on the day. Some days I'm very inspired. Other days I'm hungry and tired. That rhymed. So these are the drums. I have them split up just because it makes it easier, especially with the kick and the snare. You want to have control over individually, because if they're all glued together in a drum bus, especially when you send it out for like a final mix master, it makes it a lot easier for them, the engineer, to control that, because you want your kick and your snare to have a nice balanced relationship in the mix. And if they're all in one channel and you send them, you kick, snare, hi-hats, everything all grouped together, it's going to be a lot harder for them, or even yourself if you're doing your final mixes, to really get those elements where they need to be. So this snare is 4 layers. It starts with this, and I've heard this snare in so many people's songs. I don't know where it came from. A friend of mine gave it to me, but it came from some pack that like everyone has, but it has like a really nice tonal, like the doo. And so I started with that. This is out of this pack called Dirt and Layers. And another friend of mine gave these to me. So I go into the snare drum. Where is it? These snare drum top layers. And I found just this really simple white noise. And it just adds that, like, the tail to the snare that, you know, a lot of times people try to achieve with reverb and things like that, but it can get kind of messy. So if, you know, you want that extra length to your tail, I'd recommend going this route. I think it's a lot easier to control that. And it just kind of, you know, it just adds that nice little crispness to the top of your snare. This is just kind of like a dirty clap. And then this is the reverb section of the snare there. So layer them all together. And once again, this reverb is coming from the send channel, which is right here. It's just my pretty little Valhalla vintage verb, which is my go-to reverb. So if anyone wants to know what a good reverb is to use, that's your answer. Go get Valhalla. The rest of the drums. Let me just play that with the kick and the snare. So that's another thing too, is taking a kick drum and shortening it and reversing it. So you get this kind of like pre-swell of low end that goes into your first kick, and it just kind of, I don't know, it just kind of adds that little bit of impact. And then this is just stadium kick from the Cashmere Pack. Same thing. It's just kind of like a little bit of a dirtier pre-sweep. And it just adds a little bit more energy into it, that anticipation factor. So the thing that I liked about this one is that there's kind of this like call and response aspect to the drop, where the first half is kind of like that dry, choppy, like da-na-na-na, da-na-na-na, and then everything kind of comes in all together. So what I did for that was I just kept the first half literally just a kick and snare. So it's super simple. And then I layered it with this vinyl. What is this? Vinyl tops. It's literally just like a vinyl crackle. That just kind of makes the kick sound a little bit more dirty. But the same thing goes for this as well. So the effects are just kind of like this white noise exhaust. That just sits on top with the chords. So it's just adding a little bit of extra white noise energy. But you get kind of a better sense of this call and response idea when you start adding in the other elements. So for instance, like this guitar that comes back in. It just kind of makes that second half of the drop hit a little bit harder. So once again, when I play that with the chords, that's the other thing too. These little kicks that come in between as like a ba-ba, ba-ba. Again, it's just little things that like, how do I explain this? When you're trying to get the groove and everything to kind of swing, you'll notice that there's these spots where things sound kind of empty and your ear is like pulling you towards something. Like it wants to hear something, but it's not there. And oftentimes the solution is quite simple. It's just, you know, add something, like literally add like a kick, add another little percussive sound, add, you know, a synth wub, anything to kind of like fill in that space. So you'll get this. So that I kind of thought would just kind of, I don't know. It just, I liked it. So I put it in there. Yes, so the vocal chops. Let me get to that here. So the vocal chops are two things. One is from the original a cappella, and the other one is from this BG vocal sample that, God, where did it come from? I believe it came from, Pierce Fulton did a remix contest for his song Quagga, like, 3 years ago. And he put out the stems and then, or no, was it from that? It was from something. It was like from some pack or something where there's this little background. And yeah, it's just like a sustained, like, what? And so I'll take that and it's just easy to manipulate. Like I can just pitch it in Ableton to play the notes that I want it to. So you'll see here, I just go up 8 semitones, and then here it's just down to 5. So super simple. It's like working in audio can be, you know, evil, and it can be very, very easy as well. In terms of processing on it as well, I didn't do much. As you can see, I just EQ'd it, have it being sidechained, and then sent it to a reverb room. If, like I said, if the melody's working, if the sample sits, like, you don't need to do too much to get it to work with everything else. So that's kind of that, like, less is more. Don't overcomplicate it for yourselves. Like, I know it's super easy to get carried away with, like, oh, I've got all these fancy plugins and I really want to see what they can do. I mean, once again, I don't consider myself a very strong engineer. I'm more of the kind of, like, you know, right out of the gate producer that can just come up with cool ideas pretty quick. But I mean, as you guys can hear, the song sounds full without doing too much to it. String VSTs. Yeah, so I use, let me just open up a new Native Instruments contact. So I use this one. It's called Orchestral Essentials. And I'll use these suspense strings. And they just, I mean, you can make some really cool things. And if you go down lower, you get like a full like string section with like the lower end brass and things like that. So that's a cool one. Go check it out. Orchestral Essentials. Yeah, so the lead and the drop consists of the 2 chops. You've got the sustain vocal, and then you have these. So with these, I believe I have 2 layers. So this was a bit of a nightmare. So I really wanted to distort this because without it, it just sounded kind of empty. So let's just turn all these off. So I really wanted it to sound almost kind of like a guitar or something coming through and just like really cut through everything. So I added an overdrive and I added this guitar amp as well. But the thing with that is that you're going to get a lot of these screaming frequencies. So when you do distort things, take the time to go through and comb and cut out those ugly frequencies, because when you distort something, it's going to start adding noise in areas that you don't want. And those are those really harsh kind of like up in this, like, you know, between 3 to 4K range. Those are like the ear piercing frequencies that people are going to hear on their headphones. They're going to kind of make them, you know, scrunch their heads and not enjoy it as much. So take the time to do this, as I can show you. So like those whistling frequencies like that is just going through and just kind of ducking them out a little bit, so that they're not going to come through and hurt your ears as much. This is the same thing. It's just being pitched down. So the 2 together, it just kind of adds that lower end body to it. So you get this kind of balance between the 2 melodies here. And then again, you kind of get the sense there of like, okay, so where's this going rhythmically? What can I do to kind of make this sound cool? And then you add in these little wubs. that's pretty much it for the drop. Oh, and the same thing too. So sub bass. Again, getting things to sound full. A lot of the times, and I was guilty of this before as well, was I always thought that my tracks needed more sub, and I would just push the crap out of my low end. And if you want to get that crisp loudness, that sounds big and full, don't push your sub too hard, because when you over push your low end, especially when you run it through a limiter, everything's just going to get squashed by it. And a lot of the times, I mean, you see those horrific videos on YouTube of like, X song bass boosted, and it's like the bass didn't need to get boosted. If the song's produced properly, you shouldn't need to boost the bass. But sub is super simple. This one I think I'm just using, this square wave. You can use a sine wave. This one I use though because it does have a bit more of those upper mid harmonics. There's just a bit more warmth than a simple sine wave. And again, the purpose of it is just to sit underneath everything and just add that low end bass energy. There we go. Cool. So yeah, that's basically the first drop. So going through, you can kind of hear now how everything sits together. Did Leo teach me anything? Well, my good friend Leo is the one who taught me most about what I know when it comes to production. So I don't know if we're talking about the same Leo. But he was the first of my friends to tell me that my music sucked. And it's it's the best thing that's ever happened to me, because it's really easy to surround yourself with people that will support you and be like, oh man, yeah, you're killing it. You're going to make it. But especially when you're learning, you need that honest opinion to just come forward and be like, hey, you got a lot of work to do. And my friend Leo was the first person to do that for me, where he just basically shut me down and was like, you got to figure your stuff out. So find honest friends, if I can offer you any good advice. So it's another one too. These pianos, I didn't do the best job with it, but when it comes to making pianos sound a little bit more human, a super simple solution is to just kind of, like cascade it, or like, you see how the notes kind of come in like more the way like a human hand would. Like when you play piano, unless you're a robot, you're not going to hit all the notes at the exact same time. So if you want to have your piano sound a little bit more real, that's a super simple approach. And then also the velocity. So you'll notice that I'll drop the velocity as you go up, so it kind of gets softer, just because, for instance, your pinky isn't going to be pushing down as hard as your index finger per se, or your thumb. So that's just kind of how you make the piano sound a little bit more real. And this, I think it's just a stock. Yeah, it's just a grand piano from Ableton. And then I added this shimmer. So Valhalla shimmer is just really cool. It just adds this like weird, like you can hear. It kind of like takes the piano up into space. So it just adds this like weird pitched reverb that just kind of distorts it and makes it sound really interesting. As far as pianos though, I don't normally use the Ableton piano. I actually use the Gentleman piano, which is a contact instrument. So if you're looking for a good piano to use, I would recommend that one as well. So coming out of the drop, I go back into the drums. So I found this Cymatics wood block, and I just put a simple delay on it and a little bit of overdrive, just to kind of push it a bit harder. But I just kind of like the way it was sitting there. And then once again, these acoustics come in. So these are the ones I recorded that sound horrible. But super simple on there. I add a simple delay. This is like the noob stereo widening technique. You're basically just doubling a channel. So you'd get the exact same effect by just duplicating this channel and then pitching one to the left, pitching one to the right, and then delaying it by a few milliseconds. But I'm just doing that exact same thing with a simple delay here. It's just basically duplicating the channel left and right and then having one be 8 milliseconds ahead and the other behind. So you get that width. And then this is... So, I have to admit, feel guilty about it, but I do play guitar in most of my songs. But when it comes to riffs like this, I could spend, hours recording it and making it sound perfect. Or what I found, and this is kind of like my little Fairlane secret weapon, is in Contact here, I have this free acoustic guitar. Yeah. Yeah, so this I found on the internet somewhere. It's literally just called Acoustic Guitar Free. I don't know the official name of it or anything. But it sounds kind of poopy coming out, but if you spend some time just kind of like finessing the velocities and the swing of it, you can make it sound like a pretty real guitar. So that kind of comes in the second half of the song and then sits underneath everything in the verse here.
Feel it in my knees, trembling under me. In the sanity buried inside these streets, yeah. I'm jealous of the breeze, rambling so easy. I wish it would sweep me through misty mountains along with you. Gotta get away, lose track of time and space. Need it every day, search for the sweet escape. In the quiet place, we'll make a getaway.
I'm not sure which guitar you're referring to. The one that the acoustic guitar was made with a free plugin. Yes, yeah. Everything else was recorded though, like these terrible ones as well. And then these ones were recorded on my electric. So this is where I kind of switch up the groove of the track a little bit. This is kind of like the second half of the second verse. I just wanted it to be a bit punchier and a bit more energetic. So I swapped out from this low kick to bringing back the drop kick. Another thing you'll notice in sections like this too is just being selective with your reverb, not putting it on everything. So this rim shot, for instance, I have sent 100% to my reverb room. But in terms of this section of the song, that's one of the only elements that's being sent to a reverb channel. So it's just easier to keep everything under control that way. And then you're not dealing with, like infinite yucky reverb everywhere. Because reverb is nice, but it doesn't translate to everything well, and it's very difficult to control at times.
Lack of time and space. Needed every day a search for the sweet escape in the quiet.
So again, this is just that same pad patch, and then I just have it layered with an operator. So this is just playing a sub bass.
Lose track of time and space. Needed every day a search for the sweet escape in the quiet place. We'll make a getaway. We'll make a getaway. We'll make a getaway. On our deadline, watch the lights flicker out. Drive north out of the city, make our own little town. When the love is running out, we'll wear your heart like a crown. I'm getting so tired, man, get away. We can make a wildfire getaway.
Cool. So this fill, unfortunately, I realized when I opened up the project this morning that I'd frozen it to audio. But no worries. It's super easy to explain and really easy to kind of go over. All it is if you guys want to make those like pumping, what'd you call it? Like those pumping super saws that everyone uses in Future Bass. I have been doing it using the Autopan in Ableton. And it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like a backwards way of doing things. What I'll do is I'll just drop the phase all the way up to 360, bring the amount all the way up, and then you can do it based on the tempo of the track, or you can just do it based on the frequency. And let's just remake one really quick here for you guys. So this here, and then let's just make a new. Okay, there we go. Sounds like a disaster right now. So there we go. Let's make this longer. Apologies as well. I don't usually work on my laptop like this, so I'm a little bit slower on the trackpad. So all I'd be doing is just finessing this and getting it down to the right point. And then combining that with high pass EQ. Here we go. And it just kind of comes out of this little... So you kind of get the basis there. And then obviously spending time to make sure that it falls back into the right syncopation so that you're not, you know, throwing something random into the song. The groove one, you want the groove to be there. You want it to fall back into place. So that's what I did there, was I had it kind of come from this super quick rate and then drop into a steady BPM. In terms of that as well, I didn't want it to sound empty. It is, like, for some reason when I just played that on its own, it felt like I was missing something. So I layered in these effects here, which is just a sub drop, this reverb hit, and this pluck, which I think is just that same pluck, but just a key higher or in the same key. And then when you layer those with it, it kind of, it like allows the track to breathe, if that makes sense. Because without those, it would just kind of go empty for a second. Whereas that just kind of creates a nice little atmosphere. Yeah, take a Illenium 2.0, right? Hopefully my new stuff doesn't sound too much like him, though. I don't want to get branded as the Illenium kid. I love his music, but that's his domain. I don't want to step on his turf. Yeah, so Lost Atlas. When I bounced out this project, I do bounce out the reverb as an individual stem. So it'll come out as a printed channel, yes. But as I was saying, some people prefer to mix with the reverb separated, other people don't. I've gotten different feedback from different engineers and different people in the industry that have talked about it. As I said, I used to like sending my reverb to a channel a little bit more just because A, it was quick. You know, if I was like, hey, I want this to be wet, I could just literally boost the send and send it to that reverb room. Or if, again, if I wanted to hear the track completely dry, I could just turn that off and then... So that's all the reverb's gone. It's just the delays, but then I can turn that back on. How many clips can you add? I'd assume an infinite number, as many as your computer can handle. Okay, where are we at here? I'm getting lost in my project.
We can make a wildfire get away. We can make a wildfire get away.
Yeah, so the biggest difference in the second drop, obviously, is just trying to add more energy. And I did that by just stretching out the, you could say, like the length of the chords. So they're not getting chopped the same way as they were in the first chorus. They're just being sustained out throughout it. And then it kind of has that 4 on the floor, like boom, boom, just with the chords hitting. And it gives that kind of like big anthemic finale. And the other thing I did is, so we had everything there. I just wanted to add that little bit of extra oomph to the last drop. So I emailed Nevve and told him, hey, like, can you just record some sustained vocals, like some ad-libs and things like that. They sent back some really awesome vocal samples that I could work with, and I chopped those up and came up with the vocal chops in the second drop. So it's these here. So this I started with, and then I kind of, once I heard that, knew where I wanted to take it. So what I'll do is I'll go through the acapella and I'll look for vowels. So what I mean by that is you'll hear melodies that'll either be like an E or an A or an O or like a ooh, ah, E. And if you know what vowel you want, like what kind of sound you want, it's a lot easier to go through and find that in the acapella there. So same thing, I just went through and I found that, and then I believe some of these, yeah. So I would just go through and I'll change the transposition. I'll just kind of up it to whichever note I want her to be singing. And then so there are other plugins that are much better at doing this than Ableton. The Ableton warping is okay, but I find that the formants do get shifted a little bit and it sounds a little bit weird. So plugins like Alter Boy, I would definitely recommend if you want a cleaner sound. But in this case, because I'm distorting it so much as well, I'm running it through the Saturn distortion, and I'm just bumping the drive. So I load up this crunchy amp, and then I just pushed up the band drive there on this this whole area. And then compressed it a little bit, and then once again, it was just pushing out some really ugly frequencies around here, so I just dipped that and then sidechained that to the kick. On that note too, I realized I haven't actually talked about it. I use a ghost channel for my sidechain. I know a lot of people like to use LFO Tool, or even there's some people who use Kickstart and things like that. They all work. I just liked using this because I find that I have a good amount of control over where I want my sidechain ducking to hit. I literally just have this ghost kick, which is just this super disgusting clipping kick. And I make it really, really, really short. And so when I go back into my sidechain, you'll see that I now have the ability to really control the release. It just gives it, because if the sample you're using for your sidechain is too long, if it has too long of a tail on it, you're not going to be able to drop your release. It's going to be, you're going to get kind of like a muddy. Let me see if I can recreate that. So if I lengthen this out, you'll see that you don't get quite as much control down there. Whereas if I bring that back, it's just a much quicker, snappier sidechain. I did a bit of processing on the vocals. For this song in particular, because I didn't record it with them, it came out of the studio pretty well processed. So for the most part, I just added, I think, a little bit of, I just sent it to the EQ. Yeah, I was just sending it to reverb, and there was some processing that was done to the vocals in the final mix master session, just to kind of bring up the high end a little bit. But for the most part, yeah, just like some slight de-essing and a little bit of EQing as well. Thank you, Eminis. Yes, it does. I know. Okay, I'll go over the snare again real quick. So the snare, as I showed before, is made up of these 4 layers. I have this tonal element. I added this white noise to kind of just sit on top and just add that little bit of crisp. This is a clap. And then this is a reverbed clap. And I took the transient off of this. I just added a fade. Just because I didn't want that. I just wanted the body of it. And so when you layer them together, you get a nice little snare sound. I do not have FL Studio, no, sorry. Greetings from Germany. Wie geht's? Ich bin müde und ich bin hungry. The drum hit at the end of the drop. Are you talking about the impact that comes in? Let's see. Let me play it out for you. Talking about that right there. So, lo and behold, cashmere samples everywhere. I've been exposed. I recorded the electric guitars down here in my studio. Yeah, this is just an impact of the sweep, so it's got like a pre-sweep that goes into it, but I just used the impact and then layered it with this one as well. This one's just got more of the low end body on it that I wanted. Come on, bring me food. If you can bring me a peanut butter sandwich right now, I'll love you forever. Ah, yes, my master. Ready for the most underwhelming master chain ever is literally just a limiter. As I said for this one, I don't consider myself to be much of an engineer. I think that if you can get a song to sound good enough, you shouldn't need too much on your master channel. A lot of the times what people do with their master is not try to fix problems in the mix, but just kind of remove those last little, harsh frequencies, maybe brighten things up a little bit, add a bit more stereo width. But if I could suggest anything, it's from my approach, I mean, you can argue this to the end, but don't put too much on your master chain for the sake of doing it. I think it's just kind of it's that last little 5% that just kind of brings the record through and just makes it louder. So I just have a limiter just pushing it to make it louder. Yeah, so did you guys have any other specific questions or anything that you'd want me to go over? I know I'm just kind of aimlessly rambling and walking through my project, but I'm curious to know if you guys have anything specific that you'd want me to talk to you about. Yeah, so I'll open up the supersaws again quick. And once again, I'm gonna upload this later, so I don't want to make it too much longer because I didn't realize I've almost been going for 2 hours now. Supersaws are really simple though. They're let me go to this side here. It's just a bunch of serum patches. So this was just a hyper saw, just a basic. Damn, you brought me a sandwich. I got a peanut butter sandwich. We're in business, baby. Yes, I use Length a lot, actually. Not as much for sound design, just for like odd pluck layers and things that I just want to use to kind of fill things in a bit. Yeah, so that's that one layer. And the other thing I was showing to you earlier was this hypersaw that I make using Guitar Rig, just using a formant filter and then automating the talk, and it just kind of makes it sound like somebody talking, and then adding in choirs. I think that those three together blend well and sound really cool. Yeah. No. Thank you, Opposite. Uncover You is one that I'm really proud of as well. The Choir is a contact plugin from Rain. It's just called the Classic Choir. And yeah, it's just following the same voicings that I used in the other chords. It just kind of adds that extra layer. I have tried reinstalling Guitar Rig. I've done it twice, and it's just, they're still gone. And it makes me cry every time. Yes, I am the producer of Uncover You as well. I would actually be down to do that. I didn't know what to expect with this stream, but I'm actually really happy with the turnout. You guys are asking a lot of really good questions, so I would definitely consider doing another one. I am from Vancouver, Canada, where we are currently experiencing the transition into winter. A lot of my samples do come from Splice. I also have a lot of samples that I've made. Not a ton of them, but a lot of like my snaps, some claps and things like that, I actually did with a friend a few years ago. We just were in a studio and we were doing a sample pack together. And at some point, I actually do want to put out a sample pack of my own. So I'll do that. Yeah, to answer your question, Matthias, I did. Yes, so I just kind of picked up Ableton and started playing around with it, and then moved to Vancouver to pursue music a little bit further, and had the benefit of meeting a lot of other really talented producers that kind of showed me the ways, and wouldn't necessarily in terms of teaching me, they just would show me what was wrong with the music that I was making, and then it gave me that critical feedback I needed to learn to do better in the next one. This is the second original that I've released, yes. Hey. Yeah, so I thought for the last little bit here, I'm probably going to wrap up in the next 5 minutes or so, just because we have been streaming for about 2 hours. So I figured I could play you guys a couple things that I'm working on and just see what you think of them. So to answer that question, Sparky Cat, I do actually work as an employee at Monster Cat. I mix the podcast each week, the Call of the Wild radio show. And so that was my first ever gig in the music industry. Was I got a job working for them by winning a mix contest. And then I've been mixing their podcast for about almost 3 years now. But as a musician, I'm definitely looking into potentially working with them in the future, just because they're an amazing team, and I have a lot of respect for the music that they put out. Let's see ones that I can show you guys. Here's a cool one I'm working on right now. What is it doing?
Promise if you don't let me out, I never gave up being honest. The words just burn my mouth.
I've been making music for 4.5 years. Oh, I love you too. Yeah, so that's one that I started not too long ago with a good buddy of mine. His name is Zach Gray, and he's an amazing vocalist. Thank you, Matthias. Let's figure I could show you guys one more. I'll show you a quick clip of this one. This is the next song that's coming out at the end of this month. So we're just getting everything ready for that, and we're doing some cool stuff for it. So that's my next single. It's coming out in about 20 days. Thank you. All right, I got time to show you guys probably one more, and then I'm probably gonna wrap things up here. Vocalist is a girl named Claire Ridgely. Super talented girl. Yeah. Or do I have it in my...
This night is cold in the kingdom. I can feel you fade away. From the kitchen to the bathroom sinking. Your steps keep me awake. Don't cut me down, throw me out, leave me here to waste. I once was a man with dignity and grace. Now I'm slipping through the cracks of your cold embrace. So please, please, you can show me. If you wanna go, then I'll be so lonely. If you're leaving, baby, let me down slowly. Let me down, down, let me down, down, let me down, let me down, down, let me down, down, let me down. If you wanna go, then I'll be so lonely. If you're leaving, baby, let me down slowly. Let me down. Let me down. Let me down. Cold skin, drag my feet on the tile as I'm walking down.
Yeah. So that's another one that we're working on right now. Little remix for Alec Benjamin, sorry. Yeah, I think with that, we've been going for a little while here. I wish I could stay and do this all day, but I really got to go and get some stuff done today. Wanted to thank you guys for coming and watching this. I know that it was a little bit random, and I've never streamed before, so I hope that it was entertaining at the very least and that you guys learned something. I'm going to do my best to upload all of this to my YouTube afterwards. If you could, I would love it if you guys subscribe to my YouTube channel here, Fairlane Music. I'm going to be uploading a lot more video content there, doing some walkthroughs and maybe some more organized and edited tutorials to kind of help you guys out with stuff like that. So big thank you for that. Big thank you to Andre and Trap Nation and everyone for helping out and pushing the stream a little bit. I was not expecting this many people, so that's amazing. And thank you to all of you guys for listening to my music, because without you, I wouldn't have a career in music, and you're making that happen. So thank you so much. If you don't follow me already, you can find me on Instagram as well at Fairlane Music. If you ever want to talk, send me a message. I open up all of my messages, and I love talking to you guys. So stay in touch. We got lots of really cool things coming. And yeah, once again, you guys have been great. If you have any other questions or anything specific, yeah, find me on Instagram, send me a message, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Yeah, because we're trying to build that up. But yes, thank you guys once again, and we'll see you soon.